We're just out here this morning, sitting around talking about old times, and thought we'd turn the camera on.
Well, it's still pretty early in the morning. What I was going to talk about was back when Susie and I were pretty young, we were in our 20s, I was traveling a lot, and then I quit that job to stay home. And I got a job at a industrial place, and eventually I got in a position where I pretty much apprenticed under an older fella that grew up during the Depression and worked on overhead cranes, electrical systems, and mechanical maintenance, troubleshooting and maintenance. But what I want to talk about was the things people had to do back during the Depression and in hard times even, not just the Depression, to get by. And this fellow that I worked under, he was like a foreman, and we worked the night shift. And back then you could get, I went on the night shift. I'd been working days, but I went on the night shift and started working under him. You got 10 cents more an hour to work at night. That's right.
That helped.
And that helped a lot. But anyway, he had several brothers at that time, different ages, but they had all grown up during the Depression. One of them was in World War II, and actually he was in Patton's Third Army, and he told me a lot of stories about that, because he worked at the same place. He was a welder there. But anyway, this fellow that I worked with most of the time, this other maintenance man, he said during the Depression, one thing that their dad would do, anything to try to make a little bit of money, because there just wasn't any money, there wasn't any jobs, there wasn't any work. And that was before Social Security come along, and Medicare and all this. They used plow horses for their farming. Their dad would trade for an old raw bony unbroke horse to train it to pull a plow or pull a wagon. They did have a car, they had a vehicle, but a lot of people still use mules and horses to work their farms with, or small farms. And their dad would get a new horse that didn't know nothing, and the boys would have to break it to plow or to pull a wagon, whatever. And they'd get it just in good shape. And he'd trade it on another one, just to make a little bit more money.
Yeah.
You know, just wasn't much, but just make a little spending money to help feed the family, because people seem like you can raise a lot of stuff, but you always need to go buy staples a lot of times.
Yeah.
That you can't. Different parts of the country, it's hard to raise, like sugar cane. Some places you can't hardly raise it, and wheat. But anyway, they was always trying to figure out a way to make money, and that was one of the ways he would. Their dad would. They'd get that horse broke, where it'd pull a plow pretty good, and then he'd go trade it off. We got to stop a minute to get the few chunks of wood in this little old stove. Get the coffee warmed up. That ought to do it there. Fire going. And what I was talking about was this family, or the fellow that I knew, his family during the Depression and hard times, anything to make a buck. And I'm not saying they did it, but a lot of people in that area was bootleggers back in the 30s. Even when I was growing up, there was one bootlegger.
Yeah, they did a lot of it in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood outside of a big city, right on the county line. This old fella, the way he got around it, bootmaking moonshine, he had an old school bus. And it was probably the first motorhome. But he had a cook stove in there, and he had a bunk beds, homemade bunk beds. And in the back of it, he had a still. And he would go out on the river and set up a bunch of cane poles or, lines to fish with. And he'd cook off his whiskey and dump the leavings in the river. And I don't think he ever got caught. But that was when I was growing up. But anyway, back to people, what I was getting to a while ago, people just done what they could to get by. Another fellow I knew, he farmed a lot. He had, I think, 200 or 300 acres. He had, and he told me the story. I wasn't even alive then. But he had an old tractor that was making noise, and what term for it, anybody that knows mechanics, the rods were knocking, but the bearings were getting wore, and making a lot of noise, and it was going to go out. And the bearings were on the crankshaft of an engine. And what you did back then, a lot of times, you would buy bearing inserts or shims to close that gap, because the bearings would get wore where the crankshaft would start rattling, or the pistons would start rattling. Well, they didn't have the money to do that. So he took one of these. This is a Prince Albert can, and anybody that don't know, that's cigarette tobacco that people used to roll cigarettes out of. There was different brands, but this was the major brand that I've ever familiar with a long time ago. And the reason we've got one, old miners used to use these to put their claims in. We find these a lot of times around old mines, abandoned mines. They're not being used anymore, but they just left their old claim paper, but they'd make a pile of rocks and put a stake in the pile. But down in that pile somewhere, there was usually a Prince Albert can, and it had the claim paper in it with their name on it and the description of the plot. But anyway, that's what he would use. He smoked Prince Albert, which a lot of people did, even when I was younger. So that's what he made his bearing inserts out of, and it worked. And his tractor lasted a long time doing that. But that's what people had to make do. They didn't have the money or didn't have the big stores to run to. And I think this homestead movement is bringing that back. A lot of people are getting independent, and where they try stuff on their own. And I really like to see that. I think there's hope for this country with that homestead movement starting up.
I do too. I love it.
I think we've had it easy too long. Another thing that I just tried on a whim, I've got 2 of these and I use them a lot. And
I see.
you put it on each side of your saw. If you have a long board you're going to cut, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. You put it one in front, one in back, or one on each side of a cutoff saw. I thought you can buy these at Lowe's or Home Depot or any big box store. They've got bearings inside here, at each end. Well, the bearings went out within a year. Got bad. And you can buy bearings, that's no problem. We're a little bit different here because we're far away from a big city. And the small towns anywhere around. Now, Amazon is a different story. You can do stuff real quick on Amazon, but ordering from one of the places in our area is about 2 weeks from everywhere. And if you can get the right thing. So what I did, I just kind of reflected on when I was young, talking to this guy that used the Prince Albert can to make his bearing inserts. I have what you call hole saws. Anybody that's worked with wood or anything should know. It's a different size circular saw with a drill bit in it that you bore holes like for doorknobs.
Yeah, like for a doorknob.
Yeah, for doorknobs or door locks or anything. I thought, well, why can't I make a bearing out of wood? And that's what I did. I think that's an inch and a half, I believe. Inch and a half hole saw. And it's hardwood. I believe this is mesquite is what I used. And they've been going for 5 or 6 years. I don't know all of them. They work real good. I did have to, when I took it apart, you kind of got to dismantle everything. So I had to put car keys in each end where the shaft in the middle wouldn't work back and forth and mess it up. But that's just a thing of do it yourself. When times are real bad, I mean real bad, not just, oh, I gotta go to the store and get a gallon of milk. When times are real bad, stuff like this comes in handy. Ingenuity is what created our country. When people didn't have anything, they brought their ideas with them.
Tell me about that cellar they got.
Yeah, and that was another thing. One last thing. The fellow that I apprenticed under, I was in my 20s, early 20s. His father was always looking for ways. They had a big family, like everybody did then, and looking for ways to feed his family. He took a contract from the local school, and it was a one-room schoolhouse. You've seen pictures of them. Matter of fact, we run across one up in the mountain community north of here a long ways. It's still standing. And you could look at it and all. But anyway, he took a contract with the local school one summer to build a tornado shelter there by the schoolhouse. And it was, I think it was the school that they actually went to, the boys, some of the boys. And it got, I don't know, this fellow didn't tell me how much they paid, but it took them all summer to build it. They got down about 1.5 to 2 foot deep in the dirt, and they run into solid rock. And it was sandstone, it was soft rock. Sandstone is pretty soft. Well, they didn't have the money for drills and jackhammers, and I don't even know they had them back then. This was back during the Depression. So, but you could buy dynamite, sticks of dynamite, what you see in the movies where they got a fuse on and all that. But they had to have a way of making the holes for them. Their father dreamed up the idea of taking 2-inch pipe, like pipe for fence posts, and it was heavy-duty pipe back then. And one end, of course it was hollow, one end he sharpened it with a file, made a pretty good edge, and they'd have a bucket of water out there, and they'd hit it a few times and chip it, and then pour water on it, and then chip it, and then turn it with their hands. And that's how they drilled the holes for the dynamite to go. Then they'd pack dynamite in there and blast that off the rubble, blast some of that sandstone off of there, and then haul off the rubble. And they worked all summer on that, digging down to where the you know, like 8 foot in the ground. I don't know how far above the ground. I never did ask him that, but they made a cellar. But it gave them money through the summer. And
Oh, that's hard work.
yeah, but they would tamp it a little bit, pour water on it, tamp it a little bit, and once they got a little bit of a depression, they would start turning it with their hands. And the water would help. The water would act as an aggregate to make it come off. And they done that all around that. I want to think that the cellar was about a 12 by 12 or 12 by 16. It wasn't very big, but they done it all around that in the rock and took it down. And then when they built it up with brick, it had a real good foundation. The whole point of this is if you want to, if you don't want to, then you don't have to, but if you want to, just think about what you could do yourself. And this homestead movement, it's bringing that out in people, I believe. And
Yeah.
I believe it's bringing the better people out. And I think a lot of times the government doesn't like it. They do not like independence.
I don't think they do.
There's stories all around the country of people having problems with
it's
different
like-
agencies on what they're doing, and I go along, I go along with making everything safe and this and that.
Well, it's like some states, you got to have electricity.
This state, matter of fact,
Yeah,
you could go solar,
off
like
grid,
you're off grid.
but you gotta have electric on your property.
You have to have an electric meter installed, and you have to pay a monthly charge for it.
That's crazy.
That's just a money grab.
It is.
For one thing, there's too many government workers.
Yeah.
You can go in any government building, and a good portion of them, if you go in with a camera, they're really run and hide like cockroaches. But I'm get off of that and get back to the thing of do it yourself if you can, if you want to.
I could bring your soapbox in.
I don't want to do that. I'm too lazy. I don't want to get up. But anyway, just some ideas, and this here, that might look kind of funny, or you might think that's funny, but this here has outlasted the bearings that come with that.
A piece of wood.
Yeah, just a wood at each end, and I cut it with a hole saw, and it was a pretty good fit, but I used paper to shim it to make it where it's real tight. And we don't have much humidity out here, and that would expand it and make it tight on its own. But since it's dry out here, I put it in there extra tight with some shim paper, just paper made out of cardboard. I forget what it was. Instead of throwing that away or ordering new bearings, which is not going to last too, in my opinion, this will last a long time, and it works. And it's just idea, try to get ideas about how to do stuff yourself. Susie recently talked about that solar heater that we've got, and that's not my idea. We found that on the internet. That's one good thing about technology. The internet's got a lot of information out there, especially how to fix stuff. Cars that are broke down. All over the United States there's cars broke down, and I'm not talking about the new ones with computers and such, because they are would be hard to work on, because you have to have a lot of electronic diagnostic equipment to do that. But spark plugs, changing oil, changing this, changing alternator, changing the starter. You can do that yourself if you're willing to try. People all over this country's got one or two cars sitting there idle that something's wrong with. Not everybody, but a lot of people do, and they don't know what to do about it.
I know this one lady, her grandson looks up what to do on the computer, how to fix his car, and he learns from that.
See, you just can't do any better than that. But, being independent and having ingenuity, trying to do stuff. You can always try. You might, I bet I fell on my face, I don't know how many times.
And get backed off a horse how many times?
Well, a lot. I always got back on.
Yeah.
But I've worked on our vehicles and our stuff, and run into problems. I had to regroup and try it a different way, or doing something different, or I've done something wrong.
The camera just shut off. I had restarted.
Well, what I was saying, you know, there's a lot of things you can do, and I think most people know this. You know, it's nothing new. People have always, I think, in this country, when times get hard, people jumped up and made it, and we really got it made right now. You know, as far as, you know, working on stuff, working on your cars, what are you going to do besides nothing?
Yeah.
And we can't let, you know, I'm all for, you know, things getting better, you know, like modern things, making it easy. Well, like the saws I use out there. It wasn't a long time ago that you didn't have them good of saws, you know, and you just had to use everybody used a handsaw.
Well, you done that for years.
Yeah, and on cutting trim for doorways and stuff, you used a miter saw with a little miter box. Mostly they make them out of metal too and plastic now, but they made them out of wood, and you cut your angles with a miter saw. And I doubt that's even used anymore because these cutoff saws will do all that a lot easier. But it never hurts to learn how to do the simple things, because you might have to revert back to it.
And he's going to tell you why we don't have biscuits and gravy anymore.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're trying to get away from this store-bought flour and bread, and we still have to buy some kind of flour, but we're going experimenting with almond flour and coconut flour. And I imagine everybody knows about it that's watching, or most people. It's low on carbs and no gluten in it. And we've been making bread and some kind of biscuits or rolls, but I haven't advanced out to doing it in the Dutch oven outside. That's what I want to do, is try to make biscuits that are not so hard on us. We can't eat the stuff we're used to, mainly because it's not good for you.
True.
The bread is terrible. And a lot of foods that I'm getting where anything comes in a package or a bottle or a can is not to be trusted.
Yeah.
And we're not very old, but our age, our system doesn't handle it as well as it used to. So we have to, I probably drank too much beer and whiskey a long time ago.
Whiskey?
and smoked too many cigarettes.
Yeah.
Susie just talked to somebody last weekend that is having health problems right now. And the old thing that if you quit smoking within 10 years or so, it heals itself. That's bunk. This woman,
she quit smoking, I think, about 40
years ago, or when she was 40.
When she was 40, I think.
So that was probably 50 or 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's having lung problems now.
Because of smoking.
And her doctor said because of smoking. So,
so
anybody that thinks,
yeah.
Well, I got time to heal up.
And that some people tell you your lungs heal up, but I guess they don't.
Yeah, not for everybody. Both of us used to smoke when we were younger, and we probably killed ourselves a long time ago. But I kind of like, you know, as much as we could do on our own, make our own food as much as we can. And I might get hit in the head by a meteorite tomorrow. I don't know.
Might. Well,
I would rather eat good food.
Or an alien come get us.
Well,
a UFO.
I got a fast horse for that.
Yeah.
And Sonny here,
I think they're faster.
And Sonny here, he'll bite them.
He will. He'll bite them aliens.
You'll get them, won't you, Sonny?
I'll get them aliens. They're
Sonny's
like a lizard.
Sonny's a little bit sleepy right now.
Yeah. He likes to sit around the fire,
Yeah.
listen to us talk.
But
puts him to
anyway,
sleep.
The main point of me talking this morning is if you want, it's just an idea to kick around in your head. There's a lot of things you can do yourself, and it's harder. The older you get, it's harder to do it. But there's shortcuts. You can take your time, or when you're getting up from working on a car, underneath it, sometimes you got to roll over and get up a certain way.
You don't spring up no more?
I don't jump. I remember when I was real young, we'd get new tennis shoes about once a year. And put them on and go outside, and boy, I could run and jump. It was just like,
Yeah.
just
Well,
like
they would
Superman.
have commercial new shoes, and
Yeah.
the kids would run, jump, and I believe it too. I could run faster
Yeah,
and
you
jump.
could run faster with them new shoes.
Oh,
And, but that's another time. But anyway, anybody that's interested, think about it. And the people that our age or older, the older ones are the wiser ones.
yeah.
They know all of this stuff. And if you listen to them, they can really tell you, give you a wealth of information. And they like to tell, they like to tell those old stories about how they did this and how they done that.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you who has a wealth of information about things is Ellen.
Yeah,
I wish she had a channel.
yeah. She could probably do well on the channel, spreading her knowledge around.
I know it. Even her sister said she wished she had a channel.
Yeah.
Oh, that
And she's good natured too.
yeah.
She's
Well,
easy to listen to.
Drying food, putting up food. She's just
Yeah.
real good at it.
Yeah, she probably knows a lot of old herbs and remedies and stuff. But she doesn't have a channel, I guess, does she?
No,
Okay.
that's too bad.
But,
Ellen, if you had a channel, I'd watch you.
yeah,
And I'd tell Bill, you know what Ellen did today? Yeah,
yeah, she'll tell on you.
yeah. I'm a gossip person.
But anyway, we're just out here killing some time.
Yeah, letting it
Letting
warm
the sun
up.
come up. The sun's coming up pretty good now.
I fed the chickens this morning. Most of them was still inside. It's too dark.
Yeah, we fed them. Well, the horses was hungry.
But they're always out. Hungry.
Yeah, they're ready to eat by daybreak at the latest. And so we went out pretty early this morning. We were sitting on the porch here drinking coffee.
I'm talking.
Thought we'd talk about old times. When men talk about old times, women gossip.
Yeah, and you talk about old times, and that's not gossip. Anyway, I'm gonna let y'all go because we gotta go out and do some work. I still got a bunch of plants to move in. Oh, that's a lot of work. And it was 50 this morning, so it's a little warmer.
Warm back up.
Yeah.
We just went through that cold front that's hitting a lot of the country right now. It just barely touched us, but it dropped it down into the high 30s in the morning for a while, for a few days or a couple of days.
Hey, you're itching your nose. Are you lying?
Does that mean I'm lying? No, it means
You know who said that?
who?
Nona Grace. She says, you itch your nose. You could be lying.
I might be.
Well, that's some of Bill's thanks for watching from Out West Homestead. Bye.